In today's tutorial, we're going to be learning how you can create this particular domino simulation using Blender to reveal any text or logo of your choice. To start off, we're going to grab our default cube on the z-axis and just hit Ctrl and move it so that it moves by exactly 1 unit and comes above the origin. Then we're going to scale it on the y-axis by 0.2 and scale it on the x-axis to 0.6. Right now, if we were to bevel it by going to Tab, selecting our edges and selecting these 4 edges, you'll notice that it will not be symmetrical. So if you actually take a look and you actually go to 3 or 1 and Control B, you can see how it's beveling more on the vertical axis and less on the horizontal axis. And that's because that's how this object is. If you prefer that, well and good. But if you don't, go back to object mode, hit Control A and apply scale. Now if you tab into edit mode and select those edges, Control B and bevel, you'll see that it bevels equally, which is what I prefer. As you bevel in, take your scroll wheel and just scroll up maybe 5 times to give it a nice round edge. Then you can tab back out, go to object and hit shade smooth. And to fix this shading error, we're going to go to our object data properties, normals and auto smooth. Once we have that, this is going to be our domino. We're just going to grab down the z-axis by something really small like 0.01 or 0.2, just so that when we add the plane, it doesn't interact with the plane immediately. So now before we duplicate our dominoes, we'll add in all of the properties to this domino. So let's go to the physics properties and convert this into a rigid body. We're going to keep the type as active and change the shape to a box. After that, we're going to go ahead and give it its material. So we're going to go to the material properties. We're going to change the property of the blend mode in the settings to alpha blend, and along with that we're going to switch off show backface and we're going to switch on screen space refractions. After that, we're going to go to our render properties, switch on bloom, make sure that we change the clamping to 4 and the intensity to 0.02. Along with that, we're also going to switch on our screen space reflections and make sure that we tick refraction. Now we can actually start with the material. So we're going to click and drag from that joint to open a new window and change it to the shader editor. We're going to hit N to remove the side panel and we're going to delete the principal BSDF. We're going to search for a glass BSDF and we're just going to plug that into the surface. To see the effects, we're going to go to our viewport shading of render. So right now, we can't quite see the glass material, and that's because our background is very plain. We also don't require the light as of now, so we're just going to hide the light in the viewport for now. Anyway, to actually start seeing the effects of our glass shader, we're going to go ahead and tab to go into edit mode. Make sure that we have face select on and select all of these faces and assign them a different material. So let's go to our material and add in a new material, click new and hit assign. Let's change this to emissive waves, and let's also change the name of this material to glass. So let's go to emissive waves and actually give it a wave texture. So let's delete the principal BSDF. Let's search for a wave texture and let's search for a color ramp. Now we want these waves to actually be emissive. So let's go ahead and search for an emission texture. We're going to plug the wave texture into the strength, but we want the strength to go greater than 1 as well to enhance the bloom. So we're going to have to search for a math node and plug the math node in there, but we're going to have to change it from add to multiply so that the black remains black. Now we can change the value to something really high like 5 for the bloom purposes. So now we actually have to take a look at the texture. So we're going to go ahead and plug the emission into the surface. And right now we'll see that the axis of the waves is wrong. We want them to be horizontal and go around the edges. So we're going to change from X to Y. Now you can see there are way too many lines. We want fewer lines. So we're going to change the scale down to something like 0.8. And along with that, we want the light areas to be much lesser. So we're going to take the black and just drag it in, and there you go. Now make sure, in order to get this nice refraction actually happening, you have to make sure that the blend mode is set to opaque on the second material. If you change this to anything else like alpha blend, you'll notice that you can't see through it anymore and it doesn't look as good. So make sure that the blend mode remains on opaque. Once you have that, you can tab out and you'll notice that the waves aren't symmetrical. So if you actually hit 3, you can go into the side view and you can see where it is. So we can fix that by changing the phase offset and just bringing it roughly to the center like that. Now we actually have our pieces, but we want the glass to have a little bit more roughness. So we can go ahead and go back to our glass material and just increase the roughness to something like 0.2. After that, we can go ahead and change the emission color. The last video was a time lapse where we actually use our neon blue, but this time we're going to go ahead with a neon orange. Similarly, we're going to go to our world properties and just change the color all the way to black. So there we have each of our dominoes ready to be placed. So we can just check this by hitting Shift spacebar to see that yes, it is playing, but make sure that before we copy, we always move the marker all the way back to 0. We do all the changes on 0, otherwise you'll notice problems. Like if we do shift Y and we have this over here, it shifts really nicely. But if we're on a different frame and then we try shift D, it's just gonna move around and you can't place it wherever you want and it just keeps snapping back, and there are problems like that. So always go to 0 and then place whatever you want to place. Now we can just delete these for now, and before we actually place them, let's go ahead and add in our floor, which is just going to be a plane. We're going to scale it by 1000, and then we're going to go ahead and give it a physics property as well. So we can go to the physics property, rigid body, but this is going to be passive and the shape is going to be box as well. So now when we actually play it, you see our domino just lands on the plane. Make sure that you go back to plane 0. Now to make the dominoes actually fall, we're going to have to give it something to push the dominoes off. So we're going to search for plane, search for the cube. So we're going to add in a cube, grab it on the y-axis, just move it back, grab it on the z-axis, move it up. And then we can go ahead, tab into edit mode, select this edge, and just grab it on the z-axis up by 1 unit, and then just scale it on the y-axis so that it becomes a nice ramp. Then again, grab it on the y-axis and just move it back. So once we have our ramp set up, we need something to fall off of this ramp. But in order for something to interact with the ramp, we have to make the ramp a rigid body, change the type to passive, and change the shape to the mesh. Now we can go ahead and search for a UV sphere and just Control 2 to add a subdivision surface level 2 and shade smooth. And in order to actually see everything better, we're just going to stay in object mode for now. So now we're going to scale it by 0.5 and just grab it on the y-axis just like that, and then just grab it on the z-axis and move it up. Make sure that we have rigid body, shape, sphere. So now when we actually play it, it's going to roll, and just make sure that it is knocking over our first domino. So clearly you see that it's actually hitting it too far low. We don't want that. We want it to hit a little higher. So what we can do is we can grab this on the y-axis by just a little bit and then go back to the beginning, take this and just grab it on the y-axis a little bit as well. And now let's take a look at what happens. And it nicely gets knocked over. Great. Move back to the beginning, and now we can go ahead and just take this, duplicate it. So shift D, Y, 1.5 minus 1.5, and then we want a little area before it starts knocking over our logo. So we're just going to do shift R to repeat the previous action that we did, which was shift D, Y, 1.5. So just shift R so that we give it about 10. And from the 11th one onwards, we're going to actually have to duplicate it. So let's shift R again. And now we want this to become 2. So we're going to go ahead and just grab it on the x-axis by 0.75 and then shift D, x 1.5, but minus 1.5. So now we have 2, and we have to again just play the animation to make sure that it's actually knocking that over. Now you see each of these, it feels like they're way too slow for dominoes, and that's because they actually are, because right now they're 2 meters high. So if something's 2 meters high, it's obviously going to take more time to fall. So in order to fix the speed of falling, we can go to our scene properties, go to rigid body world, and change the speed to 2.5. Of course, we could actually scale these down to be the correct units, but Blender handles simulations better when they are large objects. So we can just increase this speed. Along with that, our cache has an end at 250. That means no simulation will occur after 250 frames, but we will require more than 250 frames. So we can actually increase the end to 500 and change the end of the simulation to something like 350 for now. If it's lesser than that, we can always go ahead and reduce this. So now let's go ahead and just add in another layer. So let's make sure that we select everything in this layer. Shift D, Y, minus 1.5, then GX minus 0.75, and then take this, Shift DX 1.5. That is what we're going to be doing about 10 times so that we get 10 layers in total. So I'll speed this portion up. It's the same thing. So it's just Shift DY minus 1.5, GX 0.75, and then select the last one, and then Shift DX minus 1.5. So I'll speed this up. So now we have 10 of these set up. We have to just run the simulation once to make sure that all of them are being knocked off. And yes, they are. So now we actually have to see how many of these we require to write down whatever we want. So in this case, you can import your logo, or if it's just a text, we can just hit Shift A, text, and rotate it on the Z-axis by 90 degrees, minus 90 degrees, and just scale it up. and then just go to our text properties over here, change the alignment to center on the vertical, and also increase the character spacing by a bit, so maybe 1.4, and then tab to write whatever text we want. So I want to write sci-fi, and then just grab it on the y-axis till it comes into our space. So we need it to be at least this far, but I think this is still a little too small, so we can scale it up by a little bit more. Let's just scale it on the z-axis, grabbed on the z-axis so that it's a little higher, and also grabbed on the x-axis so that it comes down a bit. Just scale it up. Okay, this looks fine. So we need all of this to be covered. So now let's go ahead and just select our last row, and then Shift D, Y, minus 1.5, and then Shift R till the entire sci-fi is covered. And there we go, the entire sci-fi is covered. So now when we actually run this, we'll see something, but we don't want to be able to select the actual sci-fi text. So let's go all the way down to where we have our text and just go to this filters and add in this, which is selectable, and then just deselect it so that we cannot select our sci-fi anymore. So now let's go to our rendered view and actually take a look at what is happening. So if we actually play the animation, you'll see it's going really slow right now. It's going at 10 frames per second, but everything is falling down and you can clearly see the sci-fi. But we want the dominoes that are intersecting with this sci-fi to be of a different color. So how we're going to do that is we're just going to now wait for everything to fall down. We're going to zoom in and we're just going to select the dominoes that we feel are close enough to this. And because we've switched off selectable of text, when we actually select, we won't select the text. Instead, we'll select only the dominoes underneath the text. So let's go ahead and select the dominoes that we feel should be selected. So I think this one, and just go ahead and select all of them. I will speed this part up as well. So once you've selected all of them, just go to our material, go to our glass, and just hit this duplicate button so that we get a new copy of it. Then let's go to glass and just delete this. So we're right on glass 001. We're going to change the name of glass 001 to emission. So now let's search for an emission and just plug that in. We're going to keep it at white itself, but we're going to increase the strength to maybe 1. I think 2 is enough. And now make sure that you don't deselect anything. Just hit Ctrl L and link materials. And there you'll see everything gets that. But right now it's a little bit blocked out by our text that we have. So now we can just go ahead and switch off our text. So that's what it currently looks like. If you feel like something needs to be changed, like I think this C, these two should just be here. What you can do is go ahead, select just the two that's out of place, select one that's correctly textured and hit Ctrl L, link materials, select the ones that need to be changed now, select one with the correct material, Ctrl L, link material, and that's how you can change it. And this is how we get our sci-fi. Maybe sci-fi, this also does not need to be lit, so let's do that, Ctrl L, link material, and there you go. So now we need to actually bake this animation. So we can go to our scene properties itself. Here we have a cache and you can just bake it. Before baking, make sure that you Control S and save it. So we're going to actually call this Dominoes tutorial _1 because this is the second time that I am trying to make this tutorial. Technically the third time, Dominoes 2 and then Dominoes tutorial, but let's save that file and bake. Also, 350 frames was not necessary to be baked because I believe that all the dominoes fall off long before that. So right now we're facing a problem where somewhere over here we accidentally duplicated something, I believe, and because of that something over here is messing up. There's a duplicate in a few areas. I think we linked a little bit more than just the materials. Alright. I think when we were making changes and duplicating it, we were not on frame 0, which caused these problems. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the ones that are causing problems. That's these as well as this one over here. So I'm just going to hit X delete, and then we're going to take this one, Shift D Y 1.5, 1.5, and then Shift R, take this, Shift D Y 1.5, and then take these two, take this one, Control L, link materials, take this, Control L, link materials, there, that fixes that. Over here, Shift D, Y, 1.5, enter, select this, just select this and this, Control L, link materials, similarly to this one, Shift D, Y, 1.5, and there we go. So now let's actually play the entire animation once, and before that let's just delete the bake and see where this animation actually ends. So let's just play the animation, let it go run through once completely. There you go. So I think the simulation ends very much by 235. So let's change the end to 250 just to be safe, and then hit bake. So now that it's baked, we can take a look at it. It should play a lot faster, but that's all right. Now we just need to add in the finishing touches. So in order to do all of the finishing touches, the first thing is giving materials to the floor. Let's go to the floor, materials, new. So we're just going to play with the roughness. Let's search for a Voronoi texture. Go ahead and search for a color ramp. Place the color into the color ramp and this color into the roughness. And then since our plane was scaled by 1000, we're going to have to scale the Voronoi texture as well. So we're just going to type 2000 in the scale and hit enter. So that should give us some nice reflections on the floor. Similarly, we need something for this ramp as well as the ball. So for the ramp, let's add in a new texture, or we can give it the same Voronoi texture that we had, which was material, and copy it. And instead of placing it just into the roughness, we're going to also take that and place it into the emission. We're going to change the scale down to 10, and we are going to give it some color. So we're going to give it some nice orangish color. So mix RGB, place that in right there, change this color to the orangish color that we had, and change it from mix to multiply. Of course, I said orangish color, and let's just increase that just like that. And there you go. Similarly, we can give the ball the exact same material. So that's material 002, and there you go. Maybe we can go ahead and get rid of this and just make this very, very shiny. So let's just decrease the roughness and increase the metallicness. That would actually help the reflection of the ball. So it all depends on what your preference is. This might be your preference, but let's see. What we are going to do is we're going to add in our lamp now. So let's go ahead down to our light and just switch it on. But we're going to change the type. So we're going to select our light, go to our light properties and change it to an area lamp. We're going to change the shape to a disc, and we're going to change the color to a very warm orangish glow. Okay, now we can select this and just Alt R to clear its rotation. Just grab it on the Z axis and just increase the size by a lot. Let's just grab it there, G, Z, move it down and take a look at what this currently looks like. Does this look good? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on your preference. Although this gives really good reflections to our base over here, I think it's best that we take the light, scale it down, and just grab it to here. That's visible only on this. Let's decrease the power to 100 instead of 1000 and just easy. And that should be it. The rest, let everything be lit up by the materials themselves. So now we can go ahead and hit 0 to go into our camera view. Select this, tap N, view, camera to view, just N to remove that as well. In our camera settings, let's go to our viewport display and just increase passport out so that we see exactly what we're doing. And now let's go ahead and go to frame 0 and just zoom in at the ball. Our ball materials, let's go ahead and just increase metallic, switch off specular and switch the base color all the way to black. So now let's go ahead and play the animation. So with our camera selected, we're going to be zooming in on the ball just like this and hit I, location, rotation, scale. Then let's go to something like frame 50 and just zoom out. Make sure that we're getting all of the action. So let's come here and then hit I, location, rotation, scale. Then let's go to frame 100. By then we should like turn so that we can see all of these and then hit I, location, rotation, scale. Then let's go to frame 150. Let's just turn over to this side and then just zoom in a little bit. I, location, rotation, scale. Then let's go to frame 200. It's like we're just following the wave of the dominoes. Let's do that. Hit I, location, rotation, scale. This should be a frame 200. And then let's go to frame 250 and just go up. We can actually do Alt R to clear its rotation, then rotate it on the Z axis by -90, and then just place our sci-fi in, and depending on what you want, you can choose to go even higher. In case this is getting clipped off, make sure that you change your end clip to a higher number and you'll be fine, and just place it in like that. Or you could just have the sci-fi. I think I'm going to keep it like this. Hit I, location, rotation, scale, and then Shift D that to 300. I'm going to end it at 300 itself as well, so that it's a 10-second long animation. So now let's just take a look at what it currently looks like. That's what it looks like, and you clearly see that it's going completely out of bounds over here. So at frame 75, halfway through frame 75, we can just scroll to how we want it to be and then hit I. So now we can actually take a look at it going like that. Okay, and just to make this motion a lot smoother, whoa, so here clearly it goes all the way out. We don't want it to be. So let's just look at this, and you see the rotation on the Z is already 242 for some reason. So we messed up by making it -90. What we should have done is made it, since this is 230, we should have gone with 360 plus 90, or 360 360 minus 90. What is 360 minus 90? 270. So here, let's say 270 and then hit I and just shift D this off here. So now let's take a look at how it comes up. Although it's coming up right, it's still not taking everything into view. So let's go halfway through, which is 225. And just move it back so that we have sci-fi right there. I, location, rotation, scale. Now let's take a look at it. There we go. So now what we can do is we can to select everything, change this to our graph editor, and then just zoom out, and then make sure that you hit Control S to save it before doing this, and just hit Alt Shift O. That will sample keyframes in between everything, and then we can smooth them out. So now we can hit Alt O many times. So you can see I'm just going to go up to maybe something like 75 times, and that'll smoothen this out really well. So now we can just watch the animation once again, and you can see how smooth the camera motion is. So once that happens, our logo or whatever text we want has been shown off, and there we go. So that seems like it's working for me. So we can go ahead, make sure that we change our output to the folder that we saved it. So that's just / change the format to FFmpeg video, encoding to MPEG-4, and quality to perceptually lossless. Once that's done, you can go ahead and render your animation. I hope you learned something from this video and you can create a huge variety of things with this. The letters don't necessarily have to be as shown. You can do it by making the dominoes follow specific paths and forming the word letters as you want. It could even be somebody's name, as I've done in this particular animation over here. But it's all up to you, and be creative with this one and enjoy. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, share, and most importantly, stay creative.